Keith Carter, welcome to Haunted Tamwico. Tell us how this process began for making this version of Nosferatu.
Of Nosferatu. So I think I was at the Cannes Film Festival back in 2007, and I met this producer who had seen some work I've done for the DC Independent Film Festival, and she liked some of these black and white things I was doing. I was kind of trying to do this montage like it was back like in old footage, and so she said she had some old films and wondered if I'd be interested in working with her on something. And so I asked her what she had, and one of the movies she said was Nosferatu, and that got my attention because I'm a horror fan. And so that started the talks of what can we do with this movie. And so one of the things we thought about was, what if we make it a 3D movie? I've never seen a 3D version of this. And they said, was that possible? I said, I don't know, why don't we do some tests? And then from that it led into, well, why don't we make this a sound production? Why don't we add music? And it just came one on top of the other. So that was like a 2-year process, 3-year process or something like that. So that's how it began.
Okay. What kind of budget did you have for this project?
Oh man, let me tell you, the budget we had was like $13,000. We barely had anything. Now, the producer, her name was Carol Bideau, and she gave me money to start getting the equipment I needed to start doing all this editing, all this stuff. But what we really needed to really do this full length of 3D, we needed a lot more money, but all we had was $13,000. So what we decided to do, that's all the money we got. There was only 2 people working on this, me and a guy named Chris Hewer, super talented technician. And we decided we filter everything in 3D, but put our money on. I put our work on the money shots featured Orlok, because that's all we had the money to end up putting into the film. Now afterwards, when the movie was all done, there was another $7,000 spent on marketing and advertising, and so it ended up being a $20,000 budget. But for the movie itself, it was $13,000. So we barely had anything.
And did you find distribution for this? How did you get it out there?
All right, now here's the thing. This movie was so much trauma. So the producer and I split. We had a parting of words, a parting of whatever. She went her way, I went my way, and I ended up paying all the money that she put into it. And so I really should have had more patience, because when we took this movie back to Cannes Film Festival in 2009, there was all these distributors were interested, but they wanted to make changes. So when people invest money, they want to have a say-so. So all of a sudden, they want to change this, they want to change that, and I kept thinking, man, this is going to cost more money, this is going to cost more work. And finally, after a certain point, I just had enough. The last distributor that was interested was this German distributor, and they wanted to do this and do that. And I was so angry, I stood up in the film festival and I burned the entire place. I had my fill of distributors in the Cannes Film Festival, and so that led to Carol and I breaking up. And so I ended up taking the whole thing by myself. Now I was producing this, and so I had to find distributors myself. And I can't remember how I found this guy out in Los Angeles. Give me a moment, I'm gonna come back. Answer that question again in a few minutes, and I'll come back to that guy's name. Go ahead.
Okay. And so this is the 100th anniversary year of this film. Obviously, that's pretty special. Is there anything that you want people to know about it? Know about the significance of that?
Well, I do know that there's a lot of people that don't know about Nosferatu. Now, we all know because we're all horror fans here. But a lot of people, the general populace, I was talking to some of my neighbors who are really into film, and we started talking about some silent movies, and she never heard of none of these. And I told her about the screening of Orlok, of Nosferatu, and she never heard of that either. So I think this would just be a good chance for people to really get to see some classic movie that a lot of people may not know, or they've heard of, or maybe seen images of. And of course, the movie was, an infringement on the Dracula, Bram Stoker's estate. And this movie was supposed to be destroyed, and all that was left was bootleg copies, which, by the way, in order to make this film, I had to pull from 3 different sources. The producer, of course, Carol, had her own source of material, but the only shots at the end that I saw of Orlok when he rises from the woman after biting her, they were all choppy and splotchy. and I found an old Black Hawk 16 millimeter print. Now this, back in the day when we were in school in the 70s, we used to have these 16 millimeter projectors, and that's how we saw all these educational films. Well, Black Hawk's films provided a lot of this educational material, but they also had these silent movies, and there was a silent hour version of Nosferatu. I bought this off of eBay, and it was the cleanest footage I saw of that shot of Orlok, or yeah, when he was rising from the biting of the lady. So I was able to extract that. So it's like a hodgepodge of 3 different sources. And so is mine the best version? I'm going to say most people think it's too schlocky. I made it too B-movie, too Svengoolie Presents, or is that his name, Svengoolie Presents? But for the purists and the cinephiles, they might like this version, but for the people that just want to have a good time and just enjoy, you know, someone having a creative take on Nosferatu, then we got something at the Carnival of Darkness.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, enjoying that product. Now, you had something you wanted us to come back to.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So I was trying to remember how I ended up finding Jonathan. Jonathan Morton was a B-movie distributor. And what he did, his big movies that he distributed, he distributed this film called Heavy Metal Parking Lot. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that. And there was this other one that was, Ernie Fossil did the very first Star Wars fan movie. It was a parody of Star Wars called Hardware Wars. You guys remember that one? Anyway, these are his 2 big bestsellers. And of course, George Lucas, his favorite parody homage to Star Wars is Hardware Wars. So it had a huge following, a big distribution. And so these were his two of his big films. And Orlok ended up becoming one of his big properties to distribute. Now, I don't remember if it was in the back of a horror magazine, if it was Fangoria, it was something, but somehow I got his name. I sent him a copy of Orlok. He was already elated. We had this distribution deal. He, in order to get to the big distributors, which is E1 distribution, we had to go through a sub-distributor to get to E1. And E1, of course, got us into theaters. E1 got us into stores. E1 got us all over the place. But because we had to go through the sub-distributor, the money, when it came back to the sub-distributor, he didn't pay us. He took that money and some other filmmakers' money and put it into his own movie. And of course, he was going to pay us back for the money he was going to make off this movie. Of course, this movie didn't make any money. So we ended up having, or my distributors had to take him to court. And we ended up getting a fraction of the money that we would have made because we had to settle. So it really gave me a bad taste of what Hollywood is like, or the seediness of Hollywood business. But Jonathan felt so bad. Jonathan, not Jonathan Claiborne, but Jonathan Morton felt so bad for what this guy did that he ended up distributing another collection of shorts I did called Captain Amazing Lad. And because of, at the time, Captain Amazing Lad came out right around the time as the Captain America movie, I said, what if we package this to I'm getting off subject here, we package this to be off the Captain America movie, and we said, it's called Captain Amazing Lad. I said, Captain Amazing Lad saves America, but we focus on Captain and America, making those really big. And because of that, we got in tons of stores, we got huge distribution. However, nobody bought the DVD. so we were selling a lot of sizzle but no steak. But anyway, that happened because we got screwed on the Orlok thing, because of distribution. But we were out there, and we had all kinds of opportunities that were opened up because of Orlok. There was, if enough money had come from this, we were planning to do Metropolis was our next film. Also, there was another horror host that was like Svengoolie that was out in California. We were going to do something with this guy, with Orlok in his production. We even got contacted to do the 3D off of one of the Star Wars parodies, which was George Lucas' favorite film. And of course, we were hoping to time this when George Lucas puts out his first 3D movie, which he ended up putting out The Phantom Menace, and nobody went to see that. And because of that, this 3D deal died. So there's a lot of things that was on the verge of happening, but nothing happened. But at the same time, guess what? It was a great experience. It was what I call a fun movie run, which led into, doing some screenwriting and so forth. So I think I kind of gave you a long answer to a very short question.
That's okay. We certainly look forward to seeing it again in this totally different form on September 23rd. Now, just one last question. Most people know this film as Nosferatu, but you call it Orlok the Vampire.
All right, that's a very good question, man. And I realize now we shouldn't have changed Coca-Cola to something else. Coca-Cola is the name. But at the time, my producers said this movie is a different beast. It doesn't even remind me of Nosferatu. It's a whole different movie. It needs to be under another title. And so at the time when we were looking at this, Nosferatu was not Dracula. It was not Count Dracula. It was Graf Orlok. She says, let's change it to Count Orlok, or Orlok the Vampire. And of course, I didn't know. I'm not in the movie business. This was my first feature film, so I was totally going by what she thought, because she knows the business. So this was her idea. But I realized we should have kept it Nosferatu, because why? That name itself has brand value. Everyone knows Nosferatu. Not everyone knows Orlok. That sounds familiar, but I don't know. But yeah, we shouldn't have changed that. But I went with her field of expertise, and that's the way it ran. And I do realize a lot of people found the movie only by mishap or by mistake, because had we called it Nosferatu in 3D, we probably would have had better distribution. We probably would have had more sales. So that was a creative blunder, I guess you could say.
Well, it's a lot of fun to watch, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thanks for joining us. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, let me tell you this, man. Working in movies, for people that's ever done that, and I did this for a handful of years. Man, it's a lot of work for no money. So if you like making productions that make no money, movies is the way for you. Now, there's people that's making movies, but that ain't me. Making money, but that ain't me. But it's still fun. It's an experience. It's definitely an experience, and something that you always remember. And believe me, I went to a ton of film festivals because of Orlok, man, and it was a grand time, a grand conversations that led to this and led to that. And would I do it again? I probably would, but I would probably try to do it smarter. I think I know a little bit more now than I did back at the time.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.